My brother clapped after Dad slapped me in front of 60 people. Then he demanded my lakeside cottage as I'm childless. I made one silent call. Everything changed. The email came in at 2:07 p.m. on a Thursday. The subject line read, "You're invited to the Bennett family legacy banquet," with an exclamation mark that made my stomach turn. No greeting. No hi mark. Nothing to indicate the sender even remembered who I was. Just a block of text formatted like a company newsletter. Date, location, attire, semi-formal, and a paragraph about celebrating the enduring strength of the Bennett name. My name is Mark Bennett. I'm 38 years old, an architect living in Asheville, North Carolina. I've been estranged from my family in slow motion, one forgotten birthday, one undermining comment at a time, for the better part of 10 years. But this email? It didn't even pretend to hide what I'd become to them. A footnote. A formality. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally dialing Tyler. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey man, you get the invite?" "Yeah, I got it." I paused. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake. Tyler chuckled, the way he always did when he knew he'd crossed a line, but figured charm would smooth it over. "Nah man, we had a software do all the formatting. Your name probably just got swallowed up. You know how those systems are." "Sure," I said. Just making sure. "Look," he added, "it's gonna be great. Big night. Everyone's flying in. Just be there, okay?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him I could see straight through the PR spin, the glossy invite, the whole charade. But something in me, the same part that always held out hope, kept me quiet. "Yeah, I'll be there." That night, I pulled down the small cedar box from the top shelf of my closet. Inside was a wooden model of the Bennett family farmhouse, the one we lost when Dad gambled away the property rights in the 90s. I had carved it by hand, detailing every slat, every window, even the sagging back porch. I wrapped it carefully in cloth, placed it beside a folded quilt, one our grandmother made when Tyler and I were still young enough to sleep under the same roof without screaming. As I packed it all into the trunk of my car, I paused with my hand on the lid. I knew I was walking into something staged, something curated to exclude me. But a small, aching part of me still hoped, just once, I'd be seen not as a guest, not as a formality, but as family. Tyler's house sat in one of those new developments outside of Raleigh. Big boxy homes with sharp angles and spotless driveways, all lined up like showpieces. His place looked like something out of a magazine. Manicured lawn, coordinated patio furniture, even a rented string quartet playing softly on the front porch as guests filed in. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance, carrying the wrapped gift box under one arm. Rex, my dog, stayed back at the cottage. I didn't think this was the kind of event where muddy paws were welcome. A woman in a black headset and pencil skirt stood at a check-in table near the entrance. She looked up as I approached and gave me a practiced smile. "Welcome. Name, please?" "Mark Bennett." She tapped something on a tablet. You're guest number 19. She handed me a plastic badge with those exact words printed across the front in a bold serif font. Guest number 19. Inside, it was all beige walls and neutral decor, expensive, sterile, and spotless. A giant photo timeline wrapped around the living room and continued into the hall. At first glance, it looked like a family history project. Except every photo was of Tyler. Tyler as a baby, Tyler in a cap and gown, Tyler at his wedding. His kids on vacation. Serena holding a charity check. Their holiday cards enlarged and mounted like campaign posters. Not a single photo of me. I stepped closer to the wall, trying to see if maybe I'd been squeezed into a group shot somewhere in the back. Nothing. I might as well have never existed. Voices murmured behind me. A woman said, "Is he a cousin?" I thought this was just immediate family. Another voice, low and unfamiliar, responded, "Maybe someone from Serena's side?" I turned, but no one made eye contact. No one greeted me. At the buffet table, a teenage boy with gelled hair and a too-expensive watch stood sorting through the gift table. I placed my box down carefully, stepping back to let him finish. Without even looking at it, he shoved mine under the table skirt, out of sight. I opened my mouth to say something, then stopped. What would I even say? "Hey, that's mine. That gift matters." It didn't. Not here. I wandered through the rooms in a daze. Everyone looked like they belonged. The men in polished loafers and pastel dress shirts, laughing too loudly. The women with straightened hair, champagne flutes in hand, complimenting each other's skincare routines. I stood there with my off-the-rack blazer and scuffed shoes, holding a sweating glass of ice water, invisible in a house full of people who shared my last name. I wasn't Mark, the son, or Mark, the brother. I was guest number 19, and even that felt generous. In the far corner, Tyler posed for a photo in front of the Bennett legacy backdrop, one arm around our dad, the other around his oldest kid. Serena was already live-streaming it to her followers. I watched them smile like nothing was broken, like I hadn't been erased. I was halfway through my second drink, some watered-down punch that tasted like supermarket fruit cocktail, when Tyler's voice crackled through the mic. "Everybody, can I get your attention for just a minute?" The chatter slowed. Phones went up. The lights dimmed slightly as a slideshow flickered onto a projector screen, beginning with a photo of our great-grandfather next to an old plow. Tyler stood center stage beside a podium in the open-concept dining room. Behind him, Mom and Dad flanked the legacy wall, all smiles. Tyler gestured toward them. "We're here tonight to honor the strength and values that built the Bennett name. Hard work, faith, family, and the kind of sacrifice that spans generations." He pointed to a picture of himself at his college graduation. "And speaking of sacrifice," he said, smiling, "there's someone else I want to acknowledge." I felt every head turn slightly in my direction before he even said it. "Mark," he called. "Come up here, man." It wasn't a request. Reluctantly, I stood and walked up to join them. My shoes felt heavy on the polished tile, and my throat dried out in an instant. Tyler clapped a hand on my shoulder and leaned into the mic. "This guy right here, he's done well for himself. Built a quiet little life up in the mountains. Real modest. No kids, no wife, just him and his woodworking projects." The crowd chuckled politely. He turned to me. "But hey, you know what they say, legacy's not about what you keep. It's about what you give." My stomach dropped. Tyler looked back to the crowd, voice growing louder. "And that's why, tonight, we want to honor Mark by officially asking him to donate the lakeside cottage to the family trust." There was a pause, a stunned kind of silence, then a few hesitant claps. I stared at him. "What? You don't have any heirs," he said, still smiling, like this was all very reasonable. "I mean, you're not using it for anything meaningful. It's the perfect retreat for future generations." Then Mom stepped forward. "Mark," she said, folding her hands like she was offering grace, "you don't need it. You've got no legacy of your own." The room went dead silent. And then Dad, stoic, red-faced, stepped up beside me. "Don't be selfish," he muttered, low but sharp. "This family made you." When I didn't respond, when I didn't nod or smile or step toward the mic, he reached out and slapped me across the face. A sharp, open-palmed smack that echoed off the marble countertop. I stood frozen. Serena began clapping. Then others joined in, awkwardly at first, unsure of what they were even applauding. The room filled with the sound of hands slapping together in mechanical rhythm. Applause, as if something noble had just happened. I touched my cheek. It burned. But the pain wasn't what stung most. What stung was that no one looked surprised. They had planned this. All of it. I didn't say a word. I walked off the stage, past the blinking phones and the polite, confused smiles. Past Tyler, who was still nodding like he'd made some brilliant point, and past Serena, whose camera had already moved on to capture someone else's reaction. I didn't stop to collect the model farmhouse or the quilt. I just walked straight out the front door. My face still stung in the humid night air, but it was nothing compared to the heat in my chest. By the time I reached the car, I was shaking, not from fear, but from that cold, tight fury that comes after the shock wears off. I opened the door, and Rex sat up in the passenger seat, his eyes gentle and waiting. I ran a hand over his head. "Let's go home, buddy." We drove in silence, the road unspooling in front of me like a long sigh. I didn't even turn on the radio. My cheek throbbed where Dad had hit me, but the real pain, the kind that sat in your chest and rearranged everything, was deeper. They didn't just humiliate me. They wanted to. They planned it. And I had walked right into it, carrying a handmade gift like some wide-eyed kid hoping to be let back in. Never again. When I got home to the cottage, I fed Rex and sat in my study, the only room in the house I kept exactly as it was when I moved in, simple, quiet, grounded in truth. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet and took out an old accordion folder. Inside, a paper trail of every loan, every wire transfer, every invoice I had quietly paid over the years. Car repairs for Dad. Mortgage help for Tyler. Utility bills from a time when Mom claimed to be struggling. No one had ever paid me back, not once. There were also the signed copies of a home renovation I had overseen for Tyler years ago. My name on the paperwork. My card on the contractor files. And just beneath all that, a set of documents related to the cottage. Title deed, surveyor's map, tax records. All in my name. Undisputed. My phone buzzed. A message from Laura, an old family friend who had been at the banquet. "Laura, I'm so sorry I didn't step in. I didn't know they were going to do that. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone aside. I wasn't sorry. Not anymore. I opened a new email draft, attached several PDFs, and typed out a message to my lawyer. Subject, family property protection, urgent. Message, we need to talk. I'm done being quiet. The next morning, I brewed coffee, let Rex out into the yard, and got to work. I started with the most recent documents, the ones from my property file. The deed was secure. My name was listed as sole owner. But something had been gnawing at me since that night. Something in the way Tyler had announced his proposal, like it was already in motion. I pulled out the second file folder, the one with the renovation permits and tax letters. And that's when I found it. Tucked between 2 copies of last year's property taxes was a scanned form I'd never seen before. A transfer of ownership form with my signature on it. Except I hadn't signed it. It wasn't even a close match. The handwriting was too clean, too confident. Mine always slanted just slightly to the left, the loop on the K smaller. This was a forgery. I snapped a photo and sent it to my lawyer, Martin, with a message. Need to confirm if this was ever filed. Looks fake. Within the hour, Martin called. Mark, that document was submitted to your bank 2 weeks ago. They didn't approve it yet because of a missing notarization stamp, but it's real. Someone tried to transfer your cottage into a family trust, with Tyler listed as the trustee. I closed my eyes. Jesus. It gets worse, he said. We pulled some recent credit checks attached to your mother's name. Mark, there are 4 open credit accounts tied to her social security number, none of which she could have opened herself. Because of the dementia. Exactly. She's not legally competent. But 2 of the applications were submitted online, and the IP address matches Tyler's firm. The third one came from your father's business line. I sat there for a moment, the coffee cooling beside me. What about the 4th? I asked. Martin sighed. That one came from Serena's laptop, based on her work address. They hadn't just planned to humiliate me. They were trying to take everything. To build this little empire of legacy and image and influencer-ready dinners off the back of my property, and off our mother's name, too. I pulled up the party footage on my phone. Laura had sent a short clip of the slap, followed by the applause. It wasn't long, maybe 20 seconds. But it showed everything. The way my father's hand flew. The sound. The stunned silence that followed. And Serena clapping. That cold, practiced smile plastered across her face. I opened a new folder on my desktop and started dropping files in. The forged signature. The bank response. Video of the slap. Copies of the open credit accounts. Tax files I had paid for them. The email invite with my name left off. It wasn't just a family rift anymore. It was fraud. It was theft. And it was time they finally saw what it felt like to be exposed. By the end of the week, Martin had everything filed. A formal complaint went out to the bank, along with a notarized affidavit and the forged signature comparison. Another packet, complete with screenshots, application timestamps, and IP trace reports, was sent to the state attorney general's office, citing identity theft and elder financial abuse. The IRS got its own bundle of documents with a polite cover letter and a digital trail of unreported funds flowing through the Bennett Legacy Trust. A name Tyler had apparently invented 6 months ago. And then there was the video. I didn't post it myself. I sent it, quietly, directly, to a local journalist I knew from a home restoration project I'd worked on the year before. Her name was Claire Chun. She didn't ask many questions. Just watched the footage and said, if I publish this, it's going to make waves. Good, I replied. Let it. The story hit the following Monday. Local architect humiliated, slapped at legacy banquet over property dispute. Exclusive footage inside. Within hours, it spread. The slap. The applause. The dead-eyed way Serena clapped while others joined in. The headline was soon picked up by bigger outlets. By noon, it was trending on Twitter. Hashtag Bennett Family Disgrace. Serena's page, usually filled with brand partnerships and videos of her kids posing on staircases, was suddenly flooded with comments. Why were you clapping after a grown man got slapped? This your version of family values? Disgusting. Several of her sponsors pulled out by the next day. One released a public statement about not supporting performative cruelty masquerading as tradition. Another posted a thinly veiled quote. Family is who you protect, not who you parade. Gerald, my father, was quieter, but the damage was visible. His consulting firm's website quietly went offline by Wednesday. The local Chamber of Commerce issued a statement the following morning, pending internal review of a founding member. I didn't have to guess what that meant. Tyler tried to spin it. He posted a long-winded message on Facebook about misunderstandings, emotional stress, and Mark's ongoing detachment from the family. But no one bought it. Someone commented, detachment? You mean like not putting his name on the invite? Another replied, imagine slapping your own son and clapping after. Nah, I didn't respond. I didn't make a statement. I didn't explain or justify or argue. I stayed silent. The truth did all the work. Then Laura messaged again. Laura, if you need me to speak up, I will. I saw what they did. I heard the whole thing. You don't deserve any of it. For the first time in days, I smiled. I replied simply, I might take you up on that. Because this time, the stage belonged to me, and I wasn't going to waste it. 3 weeks later, the subpoenas started landing. Tyler and Gerald were both served on the same afternoon, one at his office, the other in the driveway of his country club. State investigators had completed their review of the credit files and flagged multiple accounts tied to our mother's name, all opened post-diagnosis. It was enough to trigger formal charges: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, attempted property fraud, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. The kind of legacy they never saw coming. Serena tried to pivot again, but it backfired spectacularly. She went live on her social media page, her makeup perfect, her voice trembling like a soap actress trying to sell sincerity. This has been a painful time for our family, she said. Mark's been struggling, and we're praying for his healing. Forgiveness is important. It was barely live for 10 minutes before the comments swallowed her whole. You clapped after his father slapped him. Is this the same healing where you used his mom's credit? Girl, we saw the video. Sit down. The algorithm did what it does best. Turn the story into a public reckoning. People reposted clips with overlays. TikToks recreated the banquet scene like it was a Netflix drama. One user dubbed the whole scandal the fall of the Bennetts. I stayed out of it. I didn't comment. I didn't share. I just watched and waited. Then the letter arrived. Registered mail. Thick envelope. My lawyer's return address in the corner. Inside was the confirmation I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for. Your property rights are secure. Any pending transfers have been voided. Bank documents updated. Title locked. No one could take the cottage from me. Not with a forged signature. Not with a fake trust. Not with a phony speech dressed up like a family tribute. Martin included one last note, scribbled in ink at the bottom of the page. They'll never touch it again. You're clean. I folded the letter and set it on my desk, the sunlight filtering through the study window. Rex lay by the fire, paws twitching in a dream. I walked out to the dock and stood there a long while, staring at the glassy surface of the lake. No noise. No tension. Just trees, sky, and the creak of old wood underfoot. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone clawing for a seat at the table. I didn't want their table anymore. I had my own, and it was finally, blessedly mine. It's been nearly 2 months since that night at the banquet. The slap, the applause, the unraveling of the Bennett brand. My phone doesn't ring anymore. The family group chat, once filled with emojis and polite lies, has gone silent. Tyler's Instagram page is deactivated. Serena's sponsors dropped her faster than I thought possible. And Gerald? He's facing a federal audit, alongside ongoing charges from the state for elder exploitation. His legacy is now a stack of subpoenas and court dates. And Mom is finally somewhere safe. After a lengthy review and a recommendation from my lawyer and her doctor, she was placed in a state-monitored care facility about 20 miles from my cottage. Clean, quiet, with a lake view. The kind of place she would have liked, back when she could still remember the difference between summer and fall. I haven't visited yet. I will. But not today. Instead, I mailed her the quilt. The one I'd brought to the banquet. The one that never left the bottom of the gift table. I boxed it carefully, wrote her name in thick black marker, and added a small note. For warmth. From someone who remembers. No return address. She wouldn't know it was from me. But maybe, on one of her better days, she'd recognize the stitching. Or the scent. Or the color pattern from when we used to sit on her front porch, wrapped in it during spring thunderstorms. I didn't need credit. I just needed her safe. My weekends look different now. I host a small group every other Saturday. Men from around the region, most of them dealing with estrangement, inheritance disputes, or just the quiet grief of being the invisible one in the family. We sit by the fire pit behind the cottage. No therapy sessions. No forced sharing. Just coffee, stories, and the comfort of not having to explain why you walked away from people who still share your blood. Rex stays curled at someone's feet, soaking in the attention like he knows what we all need. This morning, I cleaned the dock and stacked firewood. As I stirred the chili on the stove, I caught sight of myself in the window. Older than I used to look, maybe a little more worn. But calm. Steady. At sunset, I sat with a mug in my hands and Rex at my feet, notebook open on my lap. And I wrote. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped letting them erase me. I let the words sit on the page, heavy and final. For a long time, I thought survival meant forgiveness. Biting my tongue. Taking the high road. But now I know, peace isn't silence. Peace is truth. And mine lives here, far from the applause, the speeches, the legacy walls. Just me, the water, and the sound of a quiet life reclaimed.